There we go. Hello, everyone. Lori here. It is Wednesday evening, January the 16th, and we're having our first Skype session for Chem1046. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some slides just as a general things that we might have missed in the course, and then I'm going to open it up to questions to everyone. And I see that Dr. Dunning's here. Hi, Cynthia.
Hey there, I just realized my mic wasn't open. Sorry about that. It's all good. You know,
welcome. That's okay.
Thank you.
So Dr. Dunning is my esteemed colleague. She and I are great friends, and she is teaching the Chem 1047 and Chem 1046 too, Cynthia?
I did 1046 last semester in class, but this semester's just 1047.
Just 1047. Awesome. So she's coming on with me to just help me out. Cynthia, I wasn't able to get my PowerPoint loaded for some reason, so we're going to go and just share my my laptop. So it's going to look kind of funny, not the way we normally do it, but I'm not sure why that's working, but the little wheel was loading for so long. So I'm going to do plan B, which is to share my desktop.
We're nothing if not resilient.
That's right.
I actually think it's a server issue. I was having issues tonight too, so I think it's a server issue. Yep.
Cool. Well, it's nice to know it's not me. Can everyone see that? Cynthia, I'll let you be my eyes.
You're good.
Okay, awesome. So you get to see my whole PowerPoint, like the back part too, but just ignore everything else. And then so I have 4 slides that I'm going to show. If anybody has questions, just pop on the mic. And Crystal, don't worry, Wendy's going to be your voice if you have questions. So we're covered that way. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was something that's in the syllabus in the welcome unit for Chem 1046, and it's what the course expectations are. In other words, how to be successful in gaining your course credit. So there are 2 things that you must do in order to successfully achieve the credit in Chem 1046, and this is actually for all of our School of Access online courses and also in-class courses. And the first one is that you must have an overall grade of 60% or above, and you must also pass all the required course outcomes. And in our online courses, those outcomes are measured by our unit tests. So this is the part that I think some students kind of miss when they're reading over the syllabus. But what that means is that regardless of what your overall mark is, if you don't pass each test individually, your course credit is at risk. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of the course expectations. And what this means is that if you fail a unit test, what you need to do is you need to contact me immediately, tell me how you did on the test, and then we will look at makeup options. So there is a possibility for a makeup if your overall grade is in the passing range, and also how you're doing in terms of your other work. So I'm just putting that out there now. As we go along, I'll remind everybody of these course expectations, and that there could be an option for a makeup assignment or makeup a test if you do fail one of the tests. But again, it's up to how you're doing overall in the course, and there is a limit to how many makeups that we do offer. The main point is that if you fail a test, don't panic, just let me know immediately, and we can talk options at that time. So keep that in the back of your mind. You need to have an overall grade above 60 or above, and you also need to pass all those course outcomes by passing the tests. Any questions about that? I'm just going to pop back to our Skype. Does that make sense to everyone? If you can just give me a thumbs up or an okay in the chat box, or grab a mic if you have any questions. It's kind of heavy to start out the the night with, but it is important information that I wanted to make sure that everyone gets in the recording. And if I had put it at the end, who knows if people would still be around, right? Awesome. Crystal's good. Wendy's good. That's great. Okay. So the next item is course deadlines. So as you know, we have a course deadline coming up on February the 1st, and that is for Unit 1, and that includes having all of your assignments and tests completed by that February 1st midnight deadline. Our first test is a take-it-home test, so we don't have to worry about trying to get a proctored appointment for this first test. But any assignments or tests that aren't completed by that deadline, a mark of 0% will be given. We do know that we're all adult learners. We have busy lives. Some of us are working. We have children, that kind of stuff. So I do realize that sometimes life does get in the way, and therefore we've built in a little bit of leeway around those course deadlines. Normally the unit deadlines for us in Chem 1046 are on a Friday, and that's so that if a student needs an extension, they can request one through me at least 24 hours in advance, and then you can take that weekend to finish up what you need to be finished so that you can start the next unit on the Monday after. So what I'm going to ask of everybody is just be respectful that I need to set that extension up. So I do require a 24-hour notice in advance of the deadline, and that we're looking at just a couple of days to finish up a few things because we don't want to get behind. This course is very heavy in terms of the material that we're covering, and if you get any further behind than a couple of days, it makes it really hard to complete everything for this April the 26th deadline. So in terms of that last date, there aren't any extensions past that April the 26th deadline because we have to have our marks in 3 days after that. So we can't give any extensions past this April the 26th deadline, but there is room, a little bit of room, if you find that you've got yourself in a bind. So just keep that in mind. Let me know via email. You can phone me or text me. Just look at that 24 hours in advance, please, if you could. So, and Kim, I see I'm back into the Skype. Kim, I'm seeing you're asking if the take-it-home test is at 60% as well, and it is. So for all tests, whether it's a take-it-home or a proctored test, we're looking for that 60% pass mark. Any other questions on that? Okay, so we're going to move on. Just 2 more left. Stay in the loop. So how I primarily communicate are through announcements. So you want to make sure that you're checking the announcements daily. If you have set your notifications up in Brightspace, you'll get an email or a text message when I post an announcement. If you have the Pulse app on your mobile device, the Pulse app will also let you know when I have posted an announcement, but I just wanted to remind everyone to keep an eye on those announcements because that is the way that I keep you up to date on what's going on and give you guidance in terms of what you should be working on in the units. If I am to email you, I will only be using college email, so you want to make sure that your web email is working or your webmail is working, and you can find instructions for that in the welcome unit in the checklist. If anybody's having trouble with their college email, please let me know and I'll help you get back on track with that. And you can also contact me via email, phone, or text, and you can find my contact information in the welcome unit at the very top. I didn't want to post it here because I knew I'd be posting a recording on YouTube, and I don't need the rest of the world to be calling me for chem help, so I didn't put it here. But please, you can go into my welcome unit in Chem, and you can see my email and my phone number right at the very top of Brightspace.
Lori, Kimberly's just asking you a question about whether or not this includes the test that we have. Does that include the test we have for homework due February 1st? but I'm not sure which part that just came up. So Kim, are you meaning about the 60%, like back from the last slide, or I'm just not sure what you mean by that, if you can clarify.
Yes, just for homework we had, I'm not sure if it was a test. It wasn't really, I guess it was sort of a test. Maybe it was the assignment, and it was due February 1st, and I was wondering if that needs to be, I got a 57 on it, so I'm just curious if that needed to be a 60.
Sure. So Kim, if it's just the homework assignment in Mastering Chem, you don't have to worry about that, except that it will affect your overall grade. So you want to make sure that you're getting your assignments near that and over that pass mark. But what I'm talking about in terms of the individual tests, if you go past that and you follow down in the unit, there's a test module, and you'll see that that's what I'm talking about, the take-it-home test. That's the one that you need to have the 60% on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
But the homework assignment, you don't need to have the 60. So for instance, if you have an overall grade that's 60% or above, but you have one of those homework assignments that aren't, you don't, that won't sink you. You'll still get the credit. Yeah. So you just have to worry about your tests.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Yes, thank you. And with that homework assignment, you can keep that open or go back and forth all the way until February the 1st. As long as you don't save your answers in your homework assignment, you'll be able to go back. So for instance, if you get a question that you're not quite sure on, you can go back and study in your textbook and, look up YouTube videos, ask me questions, and then go back into your homework and then answer the question when you're ready.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Great. The last part of this slide is just talking about ways that aren't the best ways to communicate. I say this every time. Brightspace has an email and a pager function. It's at the very top. I don't know if I have it open here. There we go. At the very top, there's, is this one? Message alerts. Yeah, I think it's this one. You can it gives you the option to instant message me and to email. I'm going to recommend that we don't use this, because what happens is that when you send me an instant message, I don't get it unless I actually log into my computer. So I don't get it on my phone, and it comes up as a really small dot when there's a message waiting for me, and it's too small for me to really notice. So I find that this is not a consistent way to contact me. So if we can kind of use these as a last resort, that would be great. So they're not the best ways to get a hold of really any of your instructors, unless they specifically say that they like to use this, but most of us try and stay away from that. So if you can remember, only use these as a last resort. And after deadlines. Now I know that sometimes emergencies happen, and you miss a deadline. For instance, maybe you've had to go to the hospital and you really couldn't talk to me until after a deadline. I totally understand, but try and make every effort that if you need to talk about a deadline, to contact me before the deadline. That would be great. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about was just study strategies for the course. I know I've talked a little bit about it already in the announcements, but it's always good to emphasize these things. Some of my favorite recommendations are to print off the schedule in the welcome unit, because all the take-at-home tests and the proctor tests are listed, so that you know when what type of test is associated with each unit and when the deadline is. Also, you can print off the test study guide, and if I can actually, I'll pop out here for a second and go into Unit 1. I can show you where these things are. So here we go down into Unit 1. So there's the homework assignment, Kim, that I was talking about. That's the one that it's not mandatory to get a 60% on or over on that in order to pass the course, though it's nice to have a pass for that. Here's the study guide for the test, and then here is the take-it-home test. And if you click on this link, it will bring you to the test, but don't do that until you are actually ready to take the test, because you only have one attempt and there is a time limit for that. So when you're first starting off in a unit, I recommend to print off the test study guide, because it lists all the things that you are going to need to know for the test. So as you're reading Chapter 1 and Chapter 3 for Unit 1, you know what to focus on, because there is a lot of information in both those chapters. We're not going to be asking you questions on everything, but there will be questions based on these outcomes on your homework assignment and also on your test. So it's really nice to be able to print this off. There's a little print function here. You can print it off and have that close as you are working through the chapters in your chem textbook. Print off the test scrap paper and constants to get used to using them before the test. So if I go back in to back into our Intro to Chemistry, and I scroll back down to the Take It Home test, you can see that there is Unit 1 scrap paper with formula. If you click on that, and I'll do that in a moment, that's the scrap paper you can use at home while you're writing your test. There's also a periodic table study sheet, but for the Take It Home test, it's not such a big deal because you have your periodic table in your books. But if you like to have one readily available, I do have one here. And here's the scrap paper that you can print off, and you can see that the specific heat formula, the conversion of degrees Celsius, degrees Fahrenheit is here, and also kelvins to degrees Celsius. So you don't have to memorize those equations for the test or have to flip back and forth in your textbook if you have this printed off. So it's nice to have this at the very beginning of the unit as you're studying, so you can see what information is available to you. This is not so important on a Take It Home test because you'll have your textbook with you, but at a proctored test, this is all you'll be allowed to have, so it's good to become familiar with the formulas. And each test has a different formulas available or different information available for the test, so make sure that you have a look at that. And then there's one more thing that I'll show you, is the constants list. So this Take It Home test is done in Mastering Chem and has the same format as your homework. So if you've opened up your homework assignment in Mastering Chem for Unit 1, it's going to look very much like what you'll see on the test. And above the question, you'll see that there is a tab for a periodic table that you can access, and also a tab for the constants list. And the constants list has, for Unit 1, you can see that you have your conversions for joules, calories, that are something that you might possibly use for Unit 1. So I wanted to give you that ahead of time too, so you can get used to seeing this constant list. So if I go back here, the last part is you want to put at least 6 hours of study a week per online course. Some students use less than 6 hours, and I know some students who use more than 6 hours, but 6 hours is kind of the benchmark that we use in online. And it's best to break up these sessions into smaller study sessions, because brain research has shown that our brains do need downtime between our study sessions in order to really absorb the new learning. So I always like to just put that out there at the beginning of the course. If we were to compare two students, one student who studied 12 hours right before the test and another student who studied 12 hours over 2 weeks, the student who spread out their study is always going to do better than the student who binge studies the night before. So just keep that in the back of your minds when you're scheduling your study. You do want to take advantage of those downtimes just to give your brain time to regroup, and it will get stronger with that. So that's it for what I wanted to talk about in terms of this general stuff. I'm going to just come back to Skype so that I can see the chat. I'll hide this. just going to put a whiteboard up. Here we go. So thank you for watching that. I'm going to open it up now to everyone and see if there are any questions. I'm just going to scroll up. Cynthia, have I missed anything so far?
Just the very last one, Lori.
Oh, thanks. Just scrolling down. Wendy, you've asked. Yes, Wendy, you were away and you told me beforehand, so I really appreciate that. Yeah, you're fine, Wendy. You had already touched base with me. So the welcome assignment is the introduction to the class. So when you have a moment, you can post that for the welcome assignment. And then I know you've taken an online class before with me, so you can just head right into Unit 1. And while Wendy's typing, please feel free to take the microphone if you would rather do that as well. But if you have questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat function. Cynthia, do you think I've missed anything?
I think you've been very thorough, Lori. You're all good. If there is one thing that I would reiterate, I think that students always say, what do you mean I need to check my announcements every day? It really is true that you should be checking in every day. That's where things will go up. So whether or not it's that you have to open it up and read the announcements there, or you have your notifications set up so that they're coming to your phone, it really is important that you stay on top of those announcements.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And it just keeps you in the loop too. Thank you, Wendy. You posted Monday. That's awesome. So you are on to Unit 1. If you feel comfortable with the setup on your computer, you can move on to Unit 1. I know this term I downloaded Pulse for my mobile phone, and I like it for its notifications because I do get a notification for any announcements. Cynthia and I also, I'm in her 1047 course. So Cynthia, when you do an announcement, I get it on my mobile phone immediately, which is really nice.
I'm really sorry about that.
Just so you know.
But ditto.
Oh, we have fun.
They're going to think that we're crazier than we actually are, Lori. Yeah, it's all good. That's all right. I've taught Kimberly in another course. She already knows how crazy I am, so nothing new there.
So Kim's saying, after this evening, I think I'm starting to understand this more. Yay! Hey, I love that. If anyone in HRM wants to get together for a study group, I love that idea. I know in the past I've had students that talk about getting together, and I don't know if they ever do, but that's fantastic. And Kim, if you have LOL, so you might be kidding, but for anybody that's not and anybody that is watching the recording, one way that you can get a study group together is to post in the Q&A. So if you go into Unit 1, you could say, if anybody's interested, send me an email, and you can put in your email address, and you can create a study group that way. And the libraries at the NSCC are totally open to online students. You have access to everything that an in-class student would have on campus. So feel free to meet at the library or in the student commons, and a study group's awesome. And Crystal, you're asking, can you recommend some videos regarding the different formulas we'll be using? I've read through the chapters twice now, and it's not meshing for me. Crystal, I love videos, and I think it's great that if what's in the textbook isn't working for you, then definitely YouTube. You can go into YouTube and put specific heat capacity formulas, and you'll get a bunch of different instructors that are explaining it. I posted at the top of Unit 1, there is video resources, and I've posted a couple of videos that I've done myself on specific heat, so you can check there. And also, in the homework, actually I'm going to share my desktop one more time because it's probably better to show than to talk about it. So let me just bring up, here we go. Cynthia, can you see that? Are we back into Brightspace?
No, it's still, oh, there it is.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're in Unit 1 and you go down to Video Resources, I have loaded 2 videos that I made on specific heat that talk about just how to rearrange the formula and use it, so you can check those out. And also, if you have a specific question that you're not getting or not understanding in the textbook, what you can do is, I'm going to go back into chemistry, Unit 1, go down to the very bottom and post your question in the Q&A. And then I will answer with a video of my own that I've made. So I found that in the past, my chemistry students really liked posting their specific questions in the Q&A, and I was happy to post a video there as well. Khan Academy has a whole chemistry section if you want to use that, and also Bozeman Science, and I have that link in the announcements. I think I have that on maybe day 2. Bozeman Science has excellent chemistry resources as well. So hopefully between all of those things, you'll find a set of videos that you like, but if there isn't something there, then for sure go ahead and post to our Q&A, and I can share as many as you might need. Does that sound okay, Crystal? Just reading through the ones that I missed. Kim was laughing at Dr. D. That's funny.
She's done that before.
Wendy,
in fact, we may have done it together. It's all good.
That's awesome. Wendy said that she's waiting for her printed textbook. Hopefully that's going to get out. It can take, I think they're saying anywhere between 5 to 10 business days. So hopefully that will come. But you do have access to the e-textbook. I know that I've been using the VitalSource bookshelf app. That seems to be the easiest one for me to navigate through. So if while you're waiting, you might want to try that one.
Sounds like Kim's saying that she got hers in 3 days, so that's pretty good.
Oh, that's good to hear. And this goes out, if anyone doesn't receive their textbook, I would say by the end of next week, please let me know so that we can get that straightened out for you. Crystal says that she's familiar with Bozeman and Khan from biology. Yes, I love his biology videos too, so that's great. Wendy's doing the experiment tomorrow, and we've already had questions about the experiment in the Q&A for Unit 1, which is awesome. So if anyone's having trouble with any aspect of the experiment, whether actually doing the experiment or writing up your lab report, you can post questions in the Q&A. Even though the report's going to be marked, don't submit it unless you are... don't submit it until your questions have been answered. So please use the Q&A for any and all lab questions. Awesome. Yes, Wendy is coming from Toronto. Sorry, I'm just getting caught up on these. Okay, fantastic. And Wendy, I can reading through the Pearson e-text, but I can also read through the others as well. Yeah, you have access to both the Pearson e-text and also the VitalSource text. So you'll have access to both of those right now. So you can use either or.
And Wendy, I noticed you said that you're finding it hard to read the textbook on the computer. So with the VitalSource option, you can actually download a copy of that. So if for example, you have an iPad or an e-reader or something that you might find easier than sitting at the computer, just know that that's a downloadable copy that you can move to another platform. So if you that does help some students, but it may not be your case. I'll just throw that out there.
That's a good point. Thanks, Cynthia. And Kimberly, oh, you've already done your experiment. That's awesome. And you got 100% back on your salt and sand. Wow, very good. I did post that you do not need to have perfect results. I'm looking for honest results, and most people won't be able to get 100% back, but if you do, and that's great, and you have pictures, so you can show me that, which is fantastic. Did you notice, Kim, that after you recovered your salt and sand, did you notice any changes in the salt and sand? And how did you measure it? Did you measure it with the tablespoons, or did you perhaps have a scale at home? Because that can sometimes help as well. I don't expect anybody to use a scale because not everyone has a scale in their kitchen. I certainly haven't had one, so that's why we use tablespoons to measure. But if you do have a scale and you want to use a scale, that's okay as well. Wendy's saying she only has a computer for her textbook. A medicine cup, and it was a small one. Oh, cool. Nope, that works too. You don't have to use tablespoons. And did you see any difference between in the before and afters in the recovery? Awesome. So usually when with the experiment, Kimberly says that she did see a difference between the before and after, so that's great for people to expect. That's that type of observation you can include. That's called a qualitative observation, and you can include that in paragraph form in your data section under your data table and your example calculation, and you can talk about things like differences that you observe before and after an experiment, and you may see a difference in the salt and sand from when you started to when you finished. If you have to do anything like pack the sand or salt before or after, you will want to mention that in your procedure, but just make note if there are any changes between the before and after. And I think I'll leave that there. Kim, does that help in terms of your 100% recovery? Gives you a bit of an idea. If I'm still not being too clear, just send me an email and we can talk so we don't give too much away. But if anybody is finding it difficult to start, page 71 in your textbook talks about physical methods of separating mixtures. So you can have a look, and that will give you a really good idea of how to set up your experiment. Wendy, you're going to use sand from Cuba. That's awesome. And it's no problem that it's finer than the sand that we would use here. I've had students use sand from sandboxes, sand that they use to sand their driveway with in the winter, sand from beaches here. So where the sand comes from does not matter. You can use any type of sand that you can get your hands on. Okay. I'm so glad you guys have questions about the experiment and are starting to think about that. It takes, writing up your first lab report can take some time, so it's best to get started on that sooner rather than later. It's hard to do that lab at the end of the unit when you're also trying to get ready for your test, so doing it sooner in the unit is a really good strategy for getting through the unit. Kim, are the exams multiple choice? Well, we don't have any exams. They're all unit tests, and they are just on the outcomes that we're covering for each unit, so you don't have to worry about a final exam where we cover everything. The units do build on each other, so if you don't do well in one unit and then you move on to the next, you'll probably be you'll be on shaky ground to get that new information. But the good news is that every unit test is based on the outcomes just for that unit. And in terms of multiple choice, they are. So the homework assignment that you do in Mastering Chem to get ready for the test, that's basically what the test questions, the form the test questions will be in. So very, very similar looking to the homework assignments that you do. You can almost consider the homework assignments like your pre-test for the test. And then the test itself is 120 minutes, so you get 2 hours. Most students use just an hour or so of it, so you should have lots of time to double check your answers after the fact. What else do I want to say about the test? Yeah, if it's very similar, you won't be surprised by it because it looks like the homework assignment, just not as many questions as the homework assignment. Usually it's between 22 questions to 25 questions. Kimberly, does that answer your question about the exam or the test?
Yes, it does.
Okay, awesome. We've lost Wendy. Uh-oh. Wendy, if you can still hear me, just check out the recording.
Yeah, I typed her a couple messages just to see if it was the audio or if she's still chatting, but I haven't heard back, so I'm not sure what that means.
Might be your server. Might be your server connection. Okay. Anyone have any more questions? Oh, and there she goes. She might try and come back in. We'll see. Anyone else have any other questions? I don't have anything else to cover for tonight.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So water is a pure compound, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But
And-
if it's distilled water, it's pure, but water from your tap will have minerals in it. It could have some iron. It could have fluoride if you're on city water. The only true pure water that you can get would be distilled water, for instance, from your, what's that called? Dehumidifier. That will be a pure substance.
Or a sleep apnea machine.
That's what I was thinking.
I didn't know that. They're very good. You can buy distilled water too from the pharmacy, but no one has to go as far if they're using water in their experiment to get distilled water. But if you want to, you can.
I had so many questions, and I was reading up just before we came on, and I've answered like all of my questions. Not all of them, but most of them.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Well, if you think of any after the fact, then just, post in the Q&A, or if they're more personal, you can just email me, okay, Kimberly?
For sure. That assignment that we did, or all the questions, it was like 50 questions or something like that.
Yes.
After doing that assignment, I looked up everything that I was questioning, and it makes more sense. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that's the one that you didn't hit the 60% on, correct?
Correct. Yes.
What I would suggest, and because those are worth some marks, and I don't want you to I don't want that to adversely affect your overall grade going ahead. What I would suggest that as you're doing assignment, if there is any question that you're unsure of, don't save the answer, and you can ask me as many questions you want for that homework assignment. It is meant as a learning opportunity and not so much as an evaluation. So don't feel that you can't ask me a question just because you're being marked on it. For sure, you can go into the Q&A and ask me questions.
Okay.
And Wendy's back. Yay, Wendy. Hopefully you can hear us. Great. Well, I don't want to keep anybody on longer than we need. Are there any last questions? And if it's okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the recording and say thank you to everyone that couldn't participate but is watching the video this evening. You can kind of see how what Skype looks like. Moving forward, Skypes will be on a as-need basis. So if you would like to come into Skype and ask me questions and we can use the whiteboard, all you have to do is send me a text or an email and we can set up a time to come on to Skype and to do some questions. So I'm going to say bye for now. Those of you that are in the Skype still, please feel free to stay behind and ask questions, but I will turn off the recording session now. So I'm just going to